My name is Zach Ryan. I'm the executive director of SL24 Unlock the Light Foundation, which is the foundation that operates Sean's house and Sean's rooms. I'll talk more in more detail, but just an overview. Sean's house is a 24/7, 365 peer support space. So we train young people over a 7-week cohort training period to be peer supports, listen non-judgmentally, know when their training stops in a crisis situation and find somebody the resources oftentimes that are life-saving or life-changing to get them the help that they need. And just provide like some emotional support for those folks when they're feeling down, if they're depressed, if they're anxious, if they're feeling overwhelmed. Sean's rooms are a mini version of what we have in Newark. That Sean's house is just steps away from the University of Delaware. We're not affiliated with the university, but I think we benefit from being so close. And we are not only for university students, it's 14 to 24. Anybody can come in. And then from the kind of like the 46,000 people that have come through the doors since 2020 at Sean's house, we kind of launched Sean's rooms in high schools and community centers. So we're in St. Mark's, St. George's, Salesianum, the Teen Warehouse, and then soon Hodson Votech is going to be our next stop. And then we're also looking to expand beyond Newcastle County into Kent and Sussex counties with like operations. That's one part, the support part of our mission. Our mission is to educate, assist, and support young people on their mental health journey. And so the other pieces are educate, so letting people know about resources, telling Sean's story, talking about our own stories, so other people feel empowered to talk about their own struggles, and really kind of just try to advance the conversation. And then the final piece of our mission, that assist piece, is we have a mental health scholarship. And so what we do is if somebody is uninsured or underinsured or has another barrier to getting therapy, we have a mental health scholarship fund where we will pay for somebody to get those therapy services. Um, I've been with the organization for 3 years. I was an educator for 14 years, 12 years here in Delaware at Salesianum. And throughout my time working in education, I unfortunately I lost students and alums to suicide, and I saw so many students struggle with a host of mental health challenges, and not just students. My family had struggles with their mental health, and then in colleagues and team members, and so I think for me there was moments where I felt a real inadequacy. Not only with like some systems, but with my own ability to help people that I really cared about. And so I remember the moment when Chris Locke, father of Sean Locke, who we lost in 2018, and his sister Kat, when they co-founded SL24 Unlock the Light after their son and brother. And I remember them coming to Salesianum, and it really helped us kind of change the narrative and open up a conversation. And so that's what I try to do and give back to when I can in these presentations. Um, so, oh, and by the way, just apologies for my background. I probably should have done one of the blurred backgrounds. We got my daughter's tent in the background and some random books and all those kinds of things. I hope anybody that like is easily distracted. I apologize for all the distractions in the background. Um, but we like to start with some facts, and I probably should have given a little bit of a content warning. I know we are talking about mental health. Unfortunately, suicide is something that like our community in our nation, frankly, is struggling with. And so, one of our goals or one of our visions is to make sure nobody like walks their journey, their mental health journey in darkness. And, nobody feels like they don't have anybody to talk to about their anxiety or depression and gets to that point where self-harm is something that they're thinking about. And some of the statistics here, when you look at like that 10% number, 10% of US youth say they've had suicidal ideation. There was a recent study that 20% like seriously considered suicide, not just like a suicide, like a kind of a maybe a passing suicidal ideation. So I think it's something that like more and more people are experiencing, but we depending on the year, like the kind of the conversation is becoming a little bit more open, but it's still like a drip, and we'd like to maybe turn that faucet to where more and more people are being open about things. Suicide, and this is kind of fluctuated year to year as well. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for youth ages 10 to 19 in the US. It's fluctuated between like second and third. And then you'll see like that next age group. It is also the third leading cause of death for ages 15 to 24 in Delaware. So like Delaware, in terms of the nation, that fluctuation between second and third. It's definitely a problem that we're facing. When you look at this too, like, we kind of bring up some of the demographics, but I think it's important for us to like note that like, a mental health challenge like doesn't discriminate. But like when we're looking at this, white men die by suicide 3.8 times more than females. When we're talking about the, different communities that are particularly at risk, the LGBTQ plus individuals, 39% reporting suicidal ideation. A little bit of my own experience. And again, like we can also talk about some of the factors that contribute to our mental health. So it could be society, relationships. It could be also down to the individual and their circumstances, whether it's biology or maybe an adverse childhood experience or a trauma somebody's faced that could make them more susceptible to a mental health challenge. For myself, I'm adopted, and adoptees are three times more likely to have a mental health challenge. So when I present, I always talk about like, with adoption. In my circumstances, I don't know my biological parents. I don't know much about them at all, which means I also don't know whether they struggled with their mental health. I don't know whether they struggle with substance or alcohol. And so I think there's a lot of question marks for me, and maybe something that could have been identified earlier, or there could have been an earlier intervention. And I know other adoptees, just struggle with their identity. Um, and so there could be a lot of factors, again, society, relationships, like, how a family dynamic, is a family more open about it. Those relationships, is there positive or negative peer pressure when, in terms of like how somebody is open about talking about their feelings with their friend group. If they were to put something in a chat, or want to talk to somebody in person, would that conversation even happen, or how would that chat be, received by their peers, or even like friends and family members. And so, when I kind of bring up that my own personal example, it always brings me to that last number of 11 years. On average, it takes 11 years between someone's first mental health related symptom and when they get help. And so for me, like that early intervention didn't happen. And I think, not understanding what I was going through in middle school and high school, um, and it manifesting in college and as a young professional, in anxiety, in situations that I couldn't explain, why, like I was, I was breaking out in a sweat, and I was shutting down. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to do these, go to an event, or a social event, and be in those kind of situations, like talking to people. My anxiety was spiking. And I didn't have language or understanding for it. And so, that's why, arguably the gap for me, like, it was longer than 11 years. And so we're trying to shrink that, right? We're trying to make it to where somebody maybe, knows that something's off, understands that like they're not expected to diagnose it or understand everything about it, um, but they can feel comfortable talking to somebody. And I think like that's like kind of where we're at. Um, Trying to like kind of bridge that gap, and make it 11 days or shorter, if somebody is experiencing some of these like warning signs. And by the way, this is a presentation that we would present to high school students, college students, just to kind of, I kind of want to like give a little piece of that, and then talk about the resources that we have, and answer any questions about those that you might have. So yeah, we go over warning signs. So We talk about like lack of interest. If you're somebody who, we were talking about athletes before the webinar started. If you have somebody who participates in a sport or an activity, a play, a musical, a band, um, even in just like a friend group and hanging out, and that used to be something that was enjoyable, and that person stopped showing up. I always just say, hey, it's okay to ask somebody what's going on, and they might have a perfectly good reason one weekend, and then you ask again, if they keep missing it. I think like a gentle persistence around, if somebody is like showing that lack of enthusiasm and lack of interest. I think, young people are really worried about like offending their friends and like kind of buying into that stigma. But I just said like I equate it to like a hallway with a bunch of, with a door. And if you don't, like, you can be afraid to like open that door, but if you keep it closed, because out of fear that you might anger that person, or like that doorway, or that door is a doorway to a hallway with more options and doors available to that person to get help. If you keep it closed, all those other doors stay closed as well. That hallway stays closed. Um, if somebody is feeling guilty or worthless, helpless, feeling sad or anxious often, changes in appetite. It could be, like a binge eating situation, or, when our bodies are in like fight or flight, like no time for food. If that anxiety kind of spikes, it's all put into the anxiety, or maybe it's all put into that depression and not into like, you know, so often it's breathing, it's eating, it's those kinds of things, exercise. Some of those things could be really challenging when somebody's going through depression and anxiety, but it also could be some of the best things for them. Having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, sleeping too much or too little. A lot of these things are you seeing a big variance in somebody's normal behaviors? How often they were sleeping, and now it's like they're sleeping all day. They don't want to get out of bed. A big thing could be somebody saying like, oh, misinterpreting that as like laziness. And I think like there could be so many other reasons we're finding depression among them, where somebody just doesn't want to get out of bed. They don't think it's worth it, or they don't think they're worth it. So kind of exploring that, withdrawing from friends or loved ones, feeling irritable, frustrated, having trouble concentrating, decision fatigue, feeling like you can't make decisions or that you shouldn't make decisions. And then some of those things can manifest into experiencing aches, pains, headaches, or stomach problems that do not improve with treatment. Um, the next thing that we talk about is suicide. And I think like some of the warning signs is like the language. We say like die by suicide because we don't want to kind of criminalize it. But somebody who's talking about it and is maybe going through ideation, could say, "Hey, I'm thinking about killing myself or hurting myself." And we ask people to take that language seriously if somebody says that, and bring it to a trusted adult and talk to somebody, call 988, call a crisis line, and make sure that person gets help. Seeking access to means, talking or writing about death or dying, or suicide explicitly. A feeling of hopelessness. Nobody would miss me if I'm gone. I feel trapped. When a guest comes into Sean's house, I think that trapped line it is something that we kind of anecdotally hear in somebody who's in a crisis situation. They feel like they feel like a burden to others, and that they can't talk to anybody about it, and like their feelings of hopelessness and kind of extreme lows in like self-esteem or anxiety, mean they have no avenue. And thank goodness they've taken the avenue to go to Sean's house, and just explore that for whatever reason, like a presentation like this, hopefully, or something. Like they kind of took that and really um, took the opportunity to talk to somebody. Acting recklessly, risky behavior, increased use of alcohol or drugs, the agitation and anger, or just like a dramatic mood change. I would like if somebody, has had a lot going on. Maybe there's been a loss, or there's been trouble at school, or a family dynamic that's a real challenge, and it seems like that person maybe should be like struggling a little bit, but seems unusually happy for all these things going on. I said, like, I said, hey, look, you're not trying to tear somebody down, but like just asking, like, have you been able to process all of these things? Or like, I noticed, like, this mood, I'm happy that you're happy, but like, it doesn't seem to be matching everything that I, maybe have observed or know that's going on. I think it's like okay to ask somebody that question, um, just to make sure. And then, always seek emergency medical help if person's life is in immediate danger, or if you have some reason to believe somebody might be suicidal. We make sure to have the 988 and the crisis lifeline number there. And this is recorded, so everybody should be able to have that as well. And then one thing that I won't like kind of belabor here, but like something that we don't want to put the responsibility on young people, especially young people that haven't been trained. But we do want everybody to kind of feel empowered to like start a conversation and look out for one another and like just kind of show some kindness and solidarity, and connection, because we know connection is like a huge protective factor. And so we talk about how to start a conversation. The first thing is with an expression of care. The example we have here, sorry, because this font, I'm an old man, and like this font is difficult for me to read, but just so everybody can kind of see it and hear it. I miss seeing you at yoga club. I noticed you haven't been there the last three meetings. Step two, normalize mental health by talking about it directly. My cousin struggles from depression, and she's our same age. And then number three, let them know that it's okay to struggle in response to life's challenges. It's normal to feel really sad after losing a grandparent. It's okay to ask for help too. I think normalizing, hey, it's okay to talk to your counselor. It's okay for us to go, like, talk to this adult about this. Nobody's going to judge you for going to the counselor's office or going to the wellness center. I think like those are like kind of like important things that we always try to um, emphasize. And then we kind of want to let everybody know, like, if you were to walk into 136 or go to 136 West Main Street to Sean's house, or go into a Sean's room, what does it kind of look like? And so we give a little bit of a taste of like mental health first aid and peer support here by outlining the algae method. And so the algae method is assessing for risk. We don't do a formal risk assessment, but if we ask somebody how they're doing and why they came in, what brought them to Sean's house, and then if somebody like is talking about self-harm, then that peer support, that peer 24 support specialist, they know like, okay, that's an instance where I need to call an on-call clinician, or call mobile crisis, to get a risk assessment done. If somebody isn't saying those things, and maybe it's something where they're feeling sad, or maybe something happened in their life, lost a job, or in a fight in a relationship, or something that's affecting their mood or their behavior. They might just like talk that out, and that looks like listening non-judgmentally, giving reassurance. Hey, people have gone through this. Everybody's had their worst day, and like we're here for you. Here's some resources, and like you can get through this. And then encouraging professional help as needed. So, whether that's us sharing Psychology Today, encouraging somebody to go to a counselor, or a resource at a school, that would probably be the next step. And then encouraging self-help. And that again could be as simple as, have you eaten something today? If somebody notices that again, somebody's in that fight or flight kind of feeling, with their mental health challenge. I think saying like, okay, have you gotten enough rest? Have you been able to like get a little exercise, or do something where like your mind's been able to like take your mind off of that. Encouraging self-help is kind of that next piece. So we give students the opportunity to kind of do that in partners at presentations. And then another thing that we like to do and make sure that we do is share resources. And so, I'll talk a little bit more about Sean's house in detail, but there are other resources that we want to make sure, if Sean's house, we are 24/7, 365. You can call 8 to 8, and get in touch with somebody. And if you come to Sean's house outside that 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., You can hit the Ring doorbell. There's always somebody there that will come down and talk to somebody. But for whatever reason, Sean's house or Sean's room doesn't seem like it's available to you. These are other resources. Or if it doesn't seem like a fit for somebody, we want to make sure somebody finds the right fit for them. Whatever's going to take, allow somebody to take the next step. Maybe it's the first step on a longer journey, or maybe it's the 10th step for somebody, or the 100th, whatever it is to like kind of advance somebody along that journey, that proverbial journey. I think like that's so important for us. And so if we can shepherd somebody to another resource, we're happy to do that. Um, the kind of a little bit like backing up a little bit. That's a picture of Sean, um, our namesake at Sean's house and Sean's rooms, and SL24. Sean Locke, just by way of a little bit of background, was a University of Delaware basketball player. He played basketball and baseball pretty much all his life and was a good athlete. But he was a walk-on at the University of Delaware, made his all the way to captain of the basketball team. And as a to go start as a walk-on and make it to a captain, kind of showed the leadership and how his teammates, he wasn't like the most talented athlete, but I think he was a talented leader. And so I think one of the kind of the shames, for like I guess the shame of the situation, not the shame for Sean, is that he had a way of connecting people and talking to people, but he struggled with what's kind of been coined a smiling depression. And so where people felt so comfortable with him, he didn't feel comfortable talking about what was going on inside of him and what he was struggling with. And that anxiety and depression, the energy that he maybe could have put into talking to somebody or resources, I think he put that into putting a smile on his face and telling people he was fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm doing okay. And so one of the things that we know around athletes, the chances of somebody struggling with their mental health when they're going through an injury, which Sean did a couple times while he was at St. Mark's High School, and then at the University of Delaware, he went through injury. Like your mental health challenges can spike during those injuries. And then Sean was moving on to commercial real estate. And so when we're talking about maybe how society would kind of, or maybe society, in 2018 would kind of measure somebody, solid family, and uh, big man on campus at a small state, and had, a solid job. And I think taking off that jersey, so to speak, was a real challenge. And so moving on to being a young professional, I think like that identity piece of like, who am I and like, what am I doing? And, I have to do all these things now as a young professional. That's like, that can be really intimidating. Transition's really intimidating and can be super challenging. And we try to emphasize that, whether we're talking to eighth graders, talking about high school, or even like different grade levels, moving on to the next grade level. As an educator, I remember how difficult sophomore year was. Freshman, you got a lot of attention, and then sophomore year, like kind of the attention that you got as a freshman, like a newbie, maybe you that was gone. The new freshmen are getting the attention, and like now you're a high schooler, and you're about to drive and all these kinds of things. Um, I think like that transition's tough. High school to college, college to young professional. We're seeing a lot of young professionals reaching out to us, needing help and some support from Sean's house. And so again, just a little bit about like Sean's house as a resource. I mentioned it's right off Main Street. It's close to the University of Delaware campus. I think we kind of benefit for the student population there by not being like directly associated with campus. The wellness center there is great, but if somebody isn't comfortable with that, like we're kind of off campus enough to where people do feel comfortable. And it started in 2020, and as I mentioned, this number is actually a little out of date. We've had probably over 46,000 visitors, add on to that the visitors that we've had to Sean's rooms, those mini Sean's houses in schools. We're probably close to like 50,000 people coming through the doors, seeing the space, and getting comfortable with talking to somebody, or just being in a space where they feel like they can be themselves. We've trained over 360, and we just finished a cohort of 60 more peer support specialists. And so peer support specialists are young people that have a lived experience with a mental health challenge. And they kind of take that experience and go through a 7-week training program, which is overseen by our peer support manager and then also a LCSW. And they kind of um, make sure somebody's prepared to do a shift at the house where somebody could come in and just needs to talk, or somebody comes in and is in crisis, and our peers are ready to kind of navigate both those kinds of situations. They learn how to listen non-judgmentally. They learn about their body language, the body language of a guest coming in, motivational interviewing. They get a lot of, they go through a mock session, where oh, we also have healthcare theater partnership with the University of Delaware where actors act out a guest experience. And then we kind of give feedback on, okay, maybe you could have asked this question. Were you thinking about like your eye contact? While this person was talking about that, it allows us to make sure like our peer support is as good as it can be. So yeah, the peer support's a really big deal. As I mentioned, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. doors are wide open. Beyond that, we always have somebody at the house. We have two residents that are peer support trained, and then we have a guest room where our peer leads, which are kind of like our shift managers who have been trained, they stay overnight and just make sure they're available. We do presentations similar to this. Sometimes we'll have peer leads, our young people, our peer support specialists, kind of talk about their experiences. Ange, who's the director of Sean's House, Angela Pugliese, she's a former educator. She'll go and speak. We'll kind of cater topics if we're speaking to an athletes group. We'll talk a little bit more about Sean's story, and maybe like some of those figures and things will be more kind of catered to things that athletes might be facing or resources that athletes might need. And that goes with any kind of group. If it's a church group, a company, young professionals, whatever the case may be, we want to make sure we try as best we can to get some of those general statistics across, but like try to cater as much as we're able. Resources, we have a harm reduction library with like gun locks and things like that, and then resources like books. So there's a lending library where people can check out self-help books. There's a big nonfiction section, but there's also a fiction section if somebody needs something to kind of like maybe do a little bit of an escape into just a world of fiction to kind of to get away from maybe what's maybe kind of been consuming their thoughts for that day or that week or month or whatever it might be. We do offer crisis support in that we have an on-call clinicians calendar, which has been a really amazing group of clinicians and mental health professionals who have donated their time. So when a peer lead is in a crisis or in a crisis situation with a guest, we can call those on-call clinicians, and usually it's just kind of it's like coaching. A lot of times our peer support specialists will say, a guest came in, said these things, and I asked these questions, and I feel like we're at a point where that we should be calling mobile crisis, and the guest is maybe willing to go into an IOP program or something like that, and we need to do the XYZ. I would say like so many times. Our on-call clinicians are really just affirming the training that our peer support specialists have had. And we're really proud of, now we're 5 years in. We're seeing that the first cohort of peer support specialists are now like they've been getting into their first choice schools for social work programs and counseling programs, and they're becoming like the next crop of professionals, which I think is really exciting for us and should be exciting for Delaware, as we mentioned in the earlier slides, like kind of the issue statement that we're facing. We have support groups. So if you go to Sean's House SL24.com, you'll see there a listing of our support groups and when they meet. Just off the top of my head, there's a Survivors of Suicide Loss group. There is it's called For the Parents, but it's for parents and guardians. So folks, if you want to help maybe navigating, your child or somebody that's in your care, and their mental health and your mental health and balancing those things, that's what that group is for. We have a grief group, which is run by students from the University of Delaware. And then we have an LGBTQIA plus support group. From time to time, we have other support groups that pop up. There was like a disordered eating support group that was there for a while. When the students that were running that group or helping facilitate that graduated, that group kind of left. But we've had a men's group in the past, and same thing. So, as peer support specialists and students with maybe like a passion or a lived experience and kind of wanting to help other people come together, we're happy to use our space to facilitate that. We do events, so we do what's called gather and grow dinners. I've had a number of people. We've had some parents like bring their kids or guardians bring young people to Sean's house, and we've also had some that like have called ahead and they've said like, "Hey, look, I think like the young person in my life could really use Sean's house, but I kind of don't know how to get them there." And I wanted it to be like more their decision more than me taking them there. I think like either way works as long as somebody's like getting the help they need. But what we like to do is these gather and grow dinners, which can be a way to get somebody into the house and comfortable. And it's a free dinner. So we have a lot of restaurant partners, Taverna, Jersey Mike's, Buffalo Wild Wings. They will provide food, and all we ask is that student groups, scout troops, musical groups, sports teams, that they come to the house and are ready to just like listen. They get a tour of the house from a peer support specialist. They hear the Peer 24 support specialist story, and then we do a mental health activity. It might be something as simple as locks and lights, what's been locking you up, who or what's been a light for you this week. Or it could be something more specific and tailored to that group. But like that's like your price of admission is like participating. And then hospitality, I always kind of joke around about this, but we're not above bribery in that like food and drinks. We have snacks all the time, drinks all the time. I mentioned those dinners. We know what can motivate, a middle schooler or a high schooler or a college student, and sometimes that can be some good snack foods. So we have those available in our kitchen as well as coffee. And so it could just be a place where somebody hangs out and they don't that dinner, that gather and grow dinner might not be like when they need somebody to talk to. And that time when they come in and grab a soda and a bag of chips and maybe do a little bit of homework, they don't need to talk to somebody. But maybe a month from now they do. And we think like a bag of chips is like a small price to pay to make sure that somebody like feels comfortable with the space, has met a peer support specialist, and feels comfortable coming back. We also have therapy dogs from Paws for People. So like they're there most days of the week, to be honest. They are super popular. They got these like little trading cards. I think some of the college students actually plan their schedules around when therapy dogs are there. So that's like pretty awesome. Um, the other space that we just added we have a yoga studio space in the back. We've been doing some arts programming out of there. A couple of our support groups are operating out of the back yoga space. It's also a mindfulness studio, so we've done some mindfulness activities. So we're really trying to kind of grow that piece. Um, I'm trying to like stop share real quick and just go full screen. Um, the other piece that I kind of want to go in a little bit of detail in is the scholarship program. So if somebody is uninsured, underinsured, or again has some other barrier to care. And like I don't want to get into too many specific examples, but there is an application on our website which I can put in the chat, or we can maybe can we, Lynn, is it possible to send this out, like send our like website? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
I'll just make sure like both the Sean's House website and the SL24 website make their way out to everybody. But that scholarship, it's open to anybody 14 to 30, while funds are available for therapy services. So if somebody can demonstrate that financial need, we would entertain that application as a committee, and hopefully get somebody the therapy services that they need. Um, I know it's a lot of information, so I want to make sure like I got there's time for questions and all that kind of stuff. If there's anything that you need me to recover or anything like that, please don't hesitate.
I just wanted to read a couple questions that are in the chat. One of the questions is, are there any supports for Spanish speaking students?
So right now we are, I think we have one or two Spanish speaking peers. I have to admit, this is an area of growth for us. We do have like a few clinicians like on our on-call calendar, who are Spanish speaking that we could connect somebody to, if there's a need there. The actually on my share screen, I don't know, the one grant application, we're working on a healing arts program specifically for Spanish speakers. So it's something that we're trying to grow, but right now it's a lot of the heavy lifting for us is with our on-call clinicians, and they're Spanish speaking.
That sounds great. There really was no other questions in the chat except there was some comments. Just thank you for that they love that you created such great opportunities for kids and in a comfortable space. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can ask those. As always, we always love learning more about Sean's house. Every time you speak, we hear something, it just grows and grows. It's just amazing how that you guys can take everyone's needs into consideration and go with it like here in the yoga studio and then with the sports. So it's an outstanding opportunity for families who are in need and who need supports. I encourage everyone from a personal aspect, take advantage of it. It's there's a lot there. I did another couple questions. Do you go into schools and do this presentation?
So yes, we do. If you connect me with an admin or somebody, we've spoken to whole schools, grade levels, health classes. So I mean, yeah, we kind of have presentations tailored to different like size groups as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I know for our district, I know you've done district-wide and school-wide presentations, and I believe that's happening, in many of the schools. And they're very, so, anyone who's here, you may want to ask your children if they've had these presentations at their school, because there's a possibility they have. And then there was from Paula. Hi, Paula. Haven't seen you in a while. How can I connect a young man with the staff you mentioned that speaks Spanish? I don't know, Zach, is that best if they call directly to Sean's house?
Yeah, or send me an email at zach@unlockthelight.com, and I can go through our on like our clinician list.
Okay. And then do you collaborate with PBH?
PBH, let me make sure I'm
Um,
familiar.
Paula, can you type exactly what that is?
It's Prevention and Behavioral Health. It's a state agency.
Okay.
Is it under like DSAM or
So it's the younger version of DSAM. So DSAM is for when our students turn 18. The kids who are accessing mental health support through the state go through PBH.
so pardon my ignorance on it. There's a good chance like Ange or somebody on the team like Gene, our peer support manager, there's a really good chance that they do, and I might not be like aware of who exactly is doing that piece of things. Apologies.
No
There's
problem.
a
No
very good
problem.
chance we do.
Yeah. And I do want to say to any of the parents or anyone attending, There really is an open door policy, so you can always go and visit, and it's right down by the University of Delaware. 136, is it, what street is it, Zach?
136 West Main Street.
West Main Street. I knew it was Main Street. I'm
Yeah.
right down the street from the landmark Deer Park.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean it's like a stone's throw away from
Yeah,
from Deer Park, right across those train tracks. Uh,
yes.
and you can't miss it. We got the lights up. Yeah, it's a special place. It's unfortunate, like where it like kind of got its start. Sean lived there, but it's kind of like my aunt who I lost, my uncle who I lost. Their pictures are up on the mantle with Sean's and some other people who I just say like their light shines a different way. And so I think the what's kind of grown from that tragedy is really remarkable. It's a special place to be. And
Okay.
everybody that walks through those doors, every young person, like I just think like the courage and bravery to like say I don't have it all figured out in a world of people like saying they have it all figured out, in a world of comparison. I just want to like if you know somebody that's struggling and thinking about like just let them know that they are so brave and that they're really, really courageous. Um, and that like they're valued.
Hmm. Do they still offer, Zach? I know when we were visiting, they had pets that came in. They did like some pet time. I don't know what you actually animal support time.
Yeah, it's the Paws dogs. Like that we work with Paws for people, and they'll be like I said, they're there most days. I
Hmm.
don't I'm struggling to think of a day that they're not there. And there's like a whole like I think we are a really popular spot for Paws dogs and their handlers. I think they like going there because the response they get. And so yeah, I think there's a pug. There's yeah, it's a really popular.
I'm
Um,
gonna have to come back now. No.
yeah, definitely.
No. Yeah, you can
Nobody
definitely
wants to see
feel
me.
you can feel the embrace when you walk in, the comfort, the support. There's just something when you walk in there. It's just so welcoming. So, and I know when we were visiting, some students just came in, got a coffee, a snack, and said hi and just kept going. But kudos to them for making the effort of just making eye contact and coming in and going on their way.
Yeah.
So
Do you have resources for youth with struggles with mental health and substance abuse? So yeah, what we do is we have some partners like kind of in the space. We always worry about like I guess what would be called like mission drift. Like we want to make sure that like we're really our peer support is like we always have peers. They're well trained. It's best emerging practices and like they're trained to like deal with mental health. And we know that there can be a nexus between mental health and substance. I think for us, like we're always careful about like not getting over our skis or over promising and trying to do too much. So we have some other organizations, like if somebody's talking about a substance use issue that's affecting their mental health, like we have some kind of like referral spots where we can reach out to them and get that person in touch with those folks.
excellent. Well, we everything you said was so informative. We thank you so much for always working with us and always the willingness to present and share with our families. I don't see any other questions in the chat, but we did record this, so we can always share it also. If there's anyone that has any questions, you're always welcome. From your initial invite, you're always welcome to reach out to either someone that's represents your district or any of us. We would always be, help you to get to the resources and to get connected with Zach. Again, if you go on to the website, Sean's House, that will link you directly also, and that provides a lot of information.
There is another question that just was asked. Are you near a DART stop, a public transportation stop?
Let me think of the closest Dart stop. Let me think of the closest. Um, yeah, because there would be one. Yeah, there's one on Main Street. Yeah. It would be. Sorry, I'm like trying to like do landmarks. We mentioned Deer Park. It would be like a block down from Deer Park.
Yeah, I believe there's one on Main Street, and there's also,
Yeah.
is that called South College now? It used to be Elkton Road, but I know it's not called Elkton Road anymore. But there's also one down that way.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few Dart stops pretty close to us. I wouldn't know the exact, but it's pretty close.
Mhm. So, and being that you're really kind of located in the university area, that, I'm sure there's more than we're describing here with the public transportation stops. But if you look into the chat, if anybody wants to take note of that, it gives the website so you can go look and get further information. But other than that, we really want to thank everyone who partners with us. Zach, thank you. Thank you to
Thank you.
everyone that attended. This information is so valuable. And thank you for helping all those who need that extra support. And we want to encourage them to be brave and to go make a visit to Sean's house if they feel they need those supports.
Thank you for platforming me for all you do, and thank you for everybody listening.
Okay. Well, if there are more questions, we'll go about our evenings. And again, thank you. And everyone have a nice night. I do want to put a plug in that we have our Newcastle County Transition Fair coming up April 12th from
March.
5 March 12th. I can't get it right. March 12th. Um, and it will be housed at the Deltec Stanton location from 5:30 to 8. And we'll have multiple vendors. So please look out for those flyers. We would love for everyone to attend.